Hey, I'm Pushkala Pattabhiraman. I'm an architect in OpenGov. OpenGov ERP is only fully integrated web-based ERP system purpose-built for our nation's cities, counties, and state agencies. With more than 300 years of collective public sector experience, we pride ourselves on delivering the most modern software backed by our world-class support and laser focus on making customers successful. We have three main products: budgeting and planning, financials, and permitting and licensing. And they go together with our reporting and transparency platform. So, what is this speech all about? How many of us here have heard this phrase? We have a last minute release blocker. Ouch, we missed evaluating performance. And as a result, the website doesn't load or is slow. There is a misinterpretation of how this feature really works. The field team had a totally different perspective on this feature. Or, sorry, we need a downtime release. We just cannot release it right now. Or there's an Easter egg. We didn't know customers have this use case and it's going to break these customers. Well, all of us have. We have all been through that roller coaster ride where there are always curveballs coming at us when we do releases. I definitely have. What happens? The main problem there is not an apples to apples problem. It's more of an apples to oranges problem. We know what we are dealing with. We know we are dealing with two different use cases, and these use cases are distinct. But now the problem is with the subtleties within that use case. What kind of orange is it? Is it a grapefruit versus a clementine versus a caracara versus a tangerine? The details is what matters. So what is this speech again about? It's about a pragmatic approach to left shift quality engineering. Why pragmatic? Well, if it is a very theoretical approach and you really cannot put it in action, then what's the point of this discussion? Cool. Sounds great. How do we get there? So here we have kind of simplified and distilled all of our concepts into very practical and applicable principles. Empathy. Empathy is the first guiding light. Have empathy for your customers. Have empathy for your peers. Have empathy for your peers in other groups like professional services, customer support, sales engineering. And most importantly, have empathy for your customers. We are in an ecosystem where there are chain reactions, and action cost here tends to reflect on somebody else somewhere directly or indirectly. Having that empathy is important. For those of us in GovTech, it affects us directly because our customers oftentimes indirectly are the general public, us. So the life comes a full circle. Align with emerging businesses. It is important to understand, especially in R&D, especially in engineering, have that big picture perspective of where the whole business is aligning. Where is the direction in which they are going? Finally, empower autonomous pods. In this era of where we are all in distributed workplaces, communication is important, and we just cannot be maintaining status quo often and for a long time. Empower smaller teams, autonomous pods to make decisions and quickly course correct if the decision is invalid. Having a long decision cycle and at the end of it requiring to course correct could cause a lot of pain and is not efficient. So what's next? Process. Process is very important because this is where a lot of differences start to emerge. People can perceive process as something that accelerates their journey towards their goal, or can perceive process as something that delays them and causes them to wait and go through the long route towards the goal. It's important to understand that the end goal is aligned and the folks are aligned on what necessarily we are all trying to achieve. The first part of it is unifying tools and processes and vocabulary. Oftentimes, there's a lot of confusion when people are talking about the same aspect, just using different words. Aligning on vocabulary, keeping snowflakes to a minimum, and converging on tools and processes definitely accelerates our quality approach. Think of the classic pizza shop. You can choose any number of toppings, but the whole process of making a pizza has not changed. We have accelerated it by using state of art ovens, or we have accelerated it by using state of art dough kneaders, but the process of making a pizza remains the same. So, quickly aligning on the process and choosing the right tool and converging on those decisions will help us accelerate this process. Leverage your organization. So we all have subject matter experts within R&D, but most importantly, there are subject matter experts beyond R&D in our support organizations, in our sales engineering organizations, in our professional services organizations, heck, even your CEO, right? So you go seek advice, guidance, help, information, support, ask, and oftentimes you will not be disappointed that you asked. Feedback. It is important to provide and also receive feedback. And more importantly, processing the feedback that you received is vital. So it could be converted into a backlog item into your Jira or your task list and acted upon, and make these feedbacks actionable. So why are we talking about process here? Why is it second in our list? The goal is to not overwhelm the teams. Be very mindful that our processes don't overwhelm the teams, and pace yourself when you roll out new processes or tooling. Technology. Most applications today are a polyglot, meaning there are different technologies, different tools, different softwares, and all of these interplay to lay out our ecosystem. So, in this technological landscape, there are different kinds of testing and quality aspects required. So, let's talk a little bit more about that. So, just in quality, you have compliance testing, customer experience testing, performance, infrastructure testing, load testing, UI testing, DR testing. You have all of these different flavors of quality engineering. How do you balance it? My guiding principle is do not over engineer. There are few low hanging fruits that you can tick off, as a consequence of which you achieve these higher order test goals. We will talk briefly about that in a bit. So you've heard about all these. So how did OpenGov implement these three aspects of people, process, and technology? We evolved quality as a product. We invested in data driven quality. We coined the phrase quality ops as a service. And as a consequence, we laid the foundation of quality engineering as culture. So if you look at this picture right here, people, technology, and process are the three load bearing pillars of quality engineering. And upon this pillar is our horizontal strut, quality engineering as a culture, the culture of quality. It's not just quality engineering team's ownership to worry about quality, but it extends beyond that. Every release, everybody is invested in ensuring that the customer experience is optimal and we enable our customers to succeed. So we have quality engineering as a culture, and on top of it, we have layered it with data-driven quality. We are constantly monitoring our metrics around quality. How many issues? What kind of issues? Which area? Is it a latent issue? Is it a totally new issue? Is it a consequence of a feature that just got released? Is it a consequence of an issue that was already there but has been resurfaced because we saw something else? So we are constantly triaging and analyzing. Even in a quarter when we don't have any issues, we go back and we analyze and say, why did we not have issues? So having the data driven mentality towards quality makes a big difference. Quality ops as a service. So what is quality ops? I'm going to pause here a little and take you back to 2018. In 2018 January, we decided to reinvent our quality engineering teams. We decided quality engineering would be a flat organization with the engineers embedded in our product suites or our core engineering teams, and will be reporting to the engineering manager. So the developers and the quality engineers report to the same manager, and they work in the same autonomous pod that we were talking about. They are guided by the same technical challenges that force them to kind of solve for specific areas of quality engineering. Maybe a team is facing serious issues with performance and they do not have any UI at all. I repeat, maybe a team is facing serious issues with performance and they do not have any UI at all. For them, it makes perfect sense to just focus on performance engineering and not worry about any UI automation. So the autonomous teams really propelled and brought together the quality culture within that team. The stake is high. And similarly, we did not have a quality engineer dedicated to each team. So people started assuming the role of quality engineer. We enabled the engineers to say, hey, your team doesn't have a quality engineer, but you are our quality engineer representative. So donning that or deeming that role kind of empowered that engineer. And we used to work with them to give them the right checklist or the right test cases just to go eyeball this. Look at our test strategy, take a look at it. So we created process that would enable even a person with a limited to no quality engineering background to succeed in this ecosystem. How did we do that? Even for a person without quality engineering background, this approach of enabling them to know and learn about quality engineering, providing them information ahead of time on what they should be expecting and what they should check, enable the whole team to develop a sense of quality as a culture. With that, we moved on to the next stage where we converged all the engineering effort under a quality engineering architect. As a generalist, the role of this architect is to identify challenges and opportunities where we could bring in better testing methodologies and processes and automation frameworks and tools that would help teams propel towards this quality journey. The main aim of this quality architect was to come up and enable and converge teams to on specific decisions. Repeat, the main goal of this quality architect was to help teams come up with ideas, converge towards the decision, and implement that decision and make it successful. This included adoption and expansion once a technology and tool has been chosen. And finally, we decided, okay, we have these processes, but we need constant feedback to say where we stand. How are we doing? Is it really working for us? Do we have to course correct? And that's when the data driven quality comes in. This is a recurring process. We do it every month, we do it every quarter, and then we revisit every year to see, are we making progress? If we are not going forward, that's not progress. It needs to kind of accelerate and left shift and move on. So overall, in OpenGov, we run quality as if it is a product. It's a startup within an organization, so to say. We have our principles. We know how to deliver. We have our own Jira product backlog that we work off and say, okay, these are the things that we are delivering. And we have our own stakeholders. In some cases it's ops, in some cases it's our design team, some cases it is our feature teams, some cases it's just each other. One team depends on another. Okay, but is it really practical? So why are we even looking at this stack? So we are looking at the stack because this is much different than what you would find in most other places, where it's usually a pyramid with unit testing at the bottom and then functional testing and then integration testing. And then you'll have, as it goes up, the pyramid gets narrower and narrower. Performance and scalability is probably on the top of the pyramid, a tiny little blob there. We moved away from that principle. We flattened the test pyramid, so to say. We said all these flavors of testing are important, some in fact more than the other. It's a matter of time on how we reach to them and start conquering one or each of these. So the goal there was, let's identify our first order versus higher order. First order is like mandatory, we need to get it done. Higher order is we will get to them eventually. So this is where the word left shift becomes important and relevant. The whole goal of this exercise was we know what we are going to achieve and we know what we would love to achieve. Let's left shift them one by one into the first order category. So accessibility, let's make it first order. Performance, let's make it first order. Security, let's make it first order. That's the left shifting aspect of bringing them into the fold. So did OpenGov manage to do it? Yes. So let's go back to January 2018. We had unit tests written by our developers, and we had a certain level of integration test, or you might call it functional test. So we come from a microservice architecture. So we have a bunch of services, and each services have their own test, functional test, as well as we have these interplay tests, right? Like the contract test and how system kind of functions with one another. So we have the integration test. So we had very minimal integration test. Cross-platform testing was mostly manual, and we used to test out different browsers and stuff. Rest of it, accessibility, performance, security, or availability, all these were kind of unheard of at that point. So we laid down what we wanted to achieve, and then we started building frameworks that would enable us to bring it in fold. So what we did was we started out with, we'll create an API framework, and that API framework would not only validate our microservice, but would also validate the contract. So when you create these frameworks from scratch, the key there is to keep it in context and in front of your developers and your quality engineers. So this goes back and it ties to another aspect of empowerment, or where we say like our developers pretty much at times don the role of a quality engineer and they help us out. Going by that principle, we didn't want to push our QA code or a quality engineering automation code in a different repo. We wanted it to be front and central so that our developers, when they write, they can quickly, with very minimal context shifting, maybe in the same repo that they are working on, bring up the QA integration test or load testing test and quickly write their code. On the same note, we started creating this philosophy of strongly typed objects. When you write API automation, it's important that you use strongly typed objects, so the test naturally, you don't even have to write extra tests. We structured our repos in a way that it would just fail at compilation. So without even writing a test, because the objects are strongly typed, you would have a build error, a compilation error right there. And more importantly, the choice of language was aligned both to developers and quality engineers. If predominant APIs are coming in from Java world, we decided, okay, our API automation is going to be a mixture of, if the predominant developers are in Java world for APIs, then we decided our API automation is going to be in Java as well. So we used Rest Assured and TestNG. And that kind of, again, minimized the context shifting and kept things relevant to the developers. Similarly for UI, we just went with the technology that our developers are using and aligned the quality team around it, so that even developers feel that they are enabled and empowered to go in and start contributing towards our frameworks. We use Browser Stack for cross-platform. For accessibility, this was big win. Being in GovTech, it was important that to our customers that our products were accessible. And hence, there was this extra impetus on ensuring the accessibility aspect of all our products. So we didn't stop with just like ensuring at the development cycle. We added recurring CI test using Lighthouse to ensure we check for quality, we check accessibility as a first-class citizen, we flag test. Gatling, this has been amazing. So we use Scala with Java. So the fact that Scala and Java can reside in the same JVM accelerated this decision. And we already built our API framework in Java. So since it's in Scala, it can, again, the interplay was natural. Lot of developers gravitated towards using Gatling, and we had a lot of traction. Now we pretty much load test most of our applications with Gatling. Finally, customer experience. All this is like internal before the code is delivered and pushed to production. But the bigger and the most important aspect is how does the code react in a production-like environment. So we use Ghost Inspector there to evaluate how the customer experience would be for the new features that go out. We have pretty robust UI automation in Nightwatch. Again, TypeScript, the choice was again centered on the language used by our developers. Couple of things that are not mentioned here is in the microservice architecture, it was important to fail fast, fail quickly, give feedback quickly. This is that feedback aspect of it. So very recently, we also came up with a technique that we could bring up the whole stack and test across multiple microservices and evaluate with our toolkit, the quality toolkit that we have here, and ensure that all of these aspects are working even before it moves to integration testing. So, what is the recurring theme here? The recurring theme here, our theme here is people, process, and technology. In empower your people, have wise technological choices, make wise technological choices, converge on those choices, and finally, process, be process light. As much as possible, and do not overemphasize on processes that cause overhead to the team and the team's performance. So where next? We are moving towards a real CI/CD world. That's where our world is headed. But with all of this that we have achieved, the goal was to get there and get there efficiently and be prepared for this. So our automation frameworks have smoked nightly. Some of these might sound like, hey, these are principles that have been there for 10, 15 years now. So are we reinventing the wheel? No, we are not reinventing the wheel. We are just adopting what is pretty much has been around into our modern agile practices and ensuring that the world moves even faster. So that's about it. And let me know if you have any questions. Would love to answer them. Thank you.